In the bustling port of Marseille, a beautiful young woman named Mercedes clung to an old man, her face pale and her cheeks wet with tears. "They can't keep him," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Edmund is innocent." Everyone knows it. The old man, Edmund's father, nodded, but his own hand shook with a deep, unsettling fear. "Yes, child," he replied, "but envy is a cruel enemy. I fear something dark has been planned," and he was right. Just outside their humble home, two men congratulated themselves in secret. Danglars, the jealous shipmate, and Fernand, the spurned lover, they had succeeded. Their scheme was in motion, and now they simply had to wait for the storm they had created to destroy their rival. The false letter, a masterpiece of treachery penned by Danglars and delivered by Fernand, had found its way into the hands of Gerard de Villefort, the ambitious deputy prosecutor of Marseille. Villefort was a young man driven by a hunger for power, eager to climb the ranks of government. He read the accusation with a grim focus. Edmond Dantes, a sailor on the ship Pharaon, carries a letter from the exiled Napoleon Bonaparte to his supporters in Paris. Villefort's face immediately darkened. The country was ruled by King Louis XVIII, restored to the throne after Napoleon's defeat. Even the slightest hint of Bonapartist activity was treated as high treason. Men had been sent to the gallows for far less. "Bring this Edmond Dantes before me," Villefort commanded his guards. "We shall see what truth lies behind his smile." Edmond was brought into a cold, stone room. His hands were bound, but his spirit was unbroken. He stood tall before the deputy prosecutor, confused but not afraid. "Monsieur Dantes," Villefort began, his voice devoid of warmth, "you are accused of carrying a letter from the exiled Emperor Napoleon to his supporters in Paris. What do you have to say for yourself?" Edmund's eyes widened in sheer astonishment. "A letter?" "Yes. I was given a letter on the island of Elba by my ship's dying captain. He begged me to deliver it, and I gave him my word. I didn't even read it. It was an act of duty to a dying man, nothing more." Villefort leaned forward, his eyes sharp as daggers. "Do you know to whom this letter was addressed?" "No, monsieur," Edmund said, his honesty shining through his confusion. "I only know it was for someone in Paris. I wished only to keep my promise to my captain. I am a sailor, not a politician." The sincerity in Edmund's voice would have swayed any fair-minded judge. But Villefort's heart was clouded by ambition, not justice. When he broke the seal and read the letter, his blood ran cold. He discovered a terrible, career-ending truth. The letter was addressed to a prominent Bonapartist leader, his own father. If this letter became public, the Villefort family name would be ruined. His career would be over before it truly began. His heart pounded in his chest as he looked at the innocent young sailor before him. Here stood a man, guiltless of any plot, yet holding the very evidence that could bring shame and destruction upon him. "You admit to carrying this letter?" Villefort demanded, his voice hardening. "Yes," Edmund replied, "but I swear to you, I had no idea of its contents." "I would gladly burn it if it causes any harm." Villefort studied Edmund for a long, agonizing moment. He saw the innocence, the youth, the simple honesty. A part of him, the man he once was, wanted to release the boy and clear his name. But his ambition, cold and ruthless, refused. Villefort's voice turned to ice. "Edmond Dantes, you have confessed to carrying a letter from an enemy of the king. For this, you are guilty of treason. Guards, take him to the Chateau d'If. No?" Edmund cried out, his voice echoing in the stone chamber. "I am innocent. Please, listen to me." But his desperate pleas were drowned out by the heavy clanging of the prison doors. When the news of Edmund's imprisonment spread through Marseille, it was met with shock and disbelief. Mercedes refused to accept it. She went from door to door, pleading with officials, her voice raw with grief. "He is no traitor," she cried. "He knows only ships, sails, and the sea," but her cries fell on deaf ears. The government, terrified of Napoleon's potential return, saw a traitor in every shadow. Edmund's father, overwhelmed by grief, grew weaker with each passing day. His son was his entire world, and now that world had been stolen from him. He would sit for hours by the window, staring out at the vast, indifferent sea, whispering Edmund's name like a prayer. Meanwhile, Danglars and Fernand celebrated their victory in quiet satisfaction. Danglars smiled, imagining himself as the new captain of the Pharaon. Fernand, however, cared only for Mercedes. He visited her daily, feigning comfort and sympathy, secretly hoping that her despair would finally push her into his arms. But each time, Mercedes turned away, her loyalty to Edmund an unshakable fortress. "I will wait for him," she said, her voice firm. "If he is in prison for 100 years, I will still wait." Her words were like a knife in Fernandez's heart. Late that night, Villefort sat alone in his lavish study, the fateful letter spread before him. His hand shook as he read his father's name once more. If the king ever discovered that his father was a traitor, all his dreams of power, his prestigious engagement, his entire future would collapse into ruin. Everything he had worked for would vanish in an instant. "I must destroy this letter," Villefort muttered to himself. With cold, calculated determination, he threw the paper into the fireplace. He watched as the flames consumed it, turning the evidence of his father's treason and Edmund's innocence into ash. He then whispered into the silent room, "Farewell, Edmund Dantes. You are a sacrifice for my future." At dawn, soldiers dragged Edmund from his cell. Shackled and pale, he was pushed into a small boat that cut through the dark waters of Marseille's harbor. He looked desperately back at the city, the port where he had dreamed of being a captain, the house where his father waited, the streets where he had walked hand in hand with Mercedes. Every sight was a fresh stab of pain in his heart. "Where are you taking me?" he cried out. "To the Chateau d'If," one of the guards replied grimly. Edmund's blood turned to ice. The Chateau d'If, an infamous fortress prison built on a desolate, rocky island. A place known for housing the most dangerous traitors and political prisoners, a place from which few men ever returned. As the boat approached the dark, imposing stone walls that rose from the sea like a tombstone, Edmund's spirit finally began to break. He stretched his hands out toward the fading city, his voice a desperate shout across the water, "Mercedes! Father, help me!" But no one answered. His only reply was the mournful crash of waves against the unforgiving rocks. As the massive iron doors of the prison shut behind him, Edmund felt the world of freedom, hope, and love slip away, leaving only a cold, hollow pain in its place. Back in Marseille, Fernand and Danglars exchanged a look of quiet triumph. "Dantes is gone," Danglars said, a smug smile on his face. "The sea has swallowed him, though he still lives." Fernand nodded, his eyes fixed on Mercedes in the distance. "Yes, gone," he agreed. "And now she will be mine," but deep in his heart, a sliver of doubt remained. He knew that even though Edmund was locked away in a stone fortress, his spirit lived on in the heart of Mercedes, and no chains, no walls could ever break that bond.